In this episode of True Crimes Unfold, we recount a detailed and disturbing account of the murder of Rhea Mae Tocmo, a young woman from Davao del Norte, Philippines. How her body was found in a carton box and the complex web of suspects and events that led to the tragedy. Please note that events and scenarios in this video may be graphic for some viewers. Discretion is advised. Details of the videos are taken from actual case files. Before we begin, let us know in the comments where you're listening from and what type of cases you'd like us to cover next, and we'll make sure to add them to our list. Don't forget to subscribe to get new stories as soon as they're released. Settle in, get ready, and let's begin. Cebu City, a bustling metropolis in the Philippines, is often known for its vibrant streets, scenic views, and warm community. But on a quiet July morning in 2023, the city awoke to a gruesome discovery that would send shockwaves across the nation. In an unassuming corner of a busy neighborhood, a carton box was found abandoned by the roadside. Inside it lay the lifeless body of 19-year-old Rhea Mae Tocmo, wrapped in duct tape, a harrowing scene that no one could have anticipated. The discovery was made by a local resident heading to work, who noticed the box emitting a foul odor. Initially believing it to be food waste, curiosity led the passerby to open it, only to stumble upon the horrifying contents. Panic ensued as the resident called the authorities, who quickly arrived to secure the area. The news spread like wildfire, igniting both fear and outrage in a community that had rarely encountered such brutality. The victim was soon identified as Rhea Mae Tocmo, a young woman from Davao del Norte who had recently relocated to Cebu City in search of better opportunities. Described as sweet, independent, and hardworking, Rhea Mae had moved away from her family to support herself and pursue her dreams. Her tragic death not only devastated her loved ones, but also left the city grappling with questions about how such a horrific crime could occur. For her family, the discovery was the culmination of days of frantic searching. Rhea Mae had been reported missing just days prior after failing to respond to calls and messages from her family and friends. Her sudden silence was unusual and alarming for someone who was known to keep in close contact with her loved ones. The carton box itself became a key piece of evidence. Duct taped shut and left in plain sight, it seemed to mock the authorities with its brazen placement. Forensic investigators meticulously examined the scene, collecting fingerprints, fibers, and DNA samples in hopes of identifying the perpetrator. The body, found in an advanced state of decomposition, indicated that Rhea Mae had been killed days before her body was discovered. These grim details painted a picture of premeditation and an attempt to conceal the crime. The brazenness of the act left the community in shock. Why was the box discarded in such a public space? Was it a taunt to law enforcement, or simply a desperate attempt to dispose of evidence? The questions only deepened as investigators began piecing together the events leading up to Rhea Mae's death. Rhea Mae's family, still in disbelief over the news, struggled to process the enormity of their loss. Her mother, speaking to the media through tears, described her daughter as a bright and caring young woman who had always prioritized her family. "She was our light," her mother said. "We don't understand how anyone could do this to her." The pain of Rhea Mae's death was compounded by the circumstances surrounding her murder. The family's initial hope of finding her alive had been replaced by the devastating reality of her violent death. Friends and relatives gathered to support the family, their collective grief palpable in the days that followed the discovery. The murder of Rhea Mae Tocmo struck a chord far beyond her immediate community. Social media erupted with outrage as Filipinos expressed their sorrow and anger over the senseless loss of a young life. Hashtags like "Justice for Rhea Mae" began trending, with users demanding swift action from law enforcement and justice for the victim. Activists and advocacy groups also took up the case, using it as an opportunity to highlight the vulnerability of young women and the need for stronger protections against gender-based violence. Rhea Mae's story is not an isolated incident, one activist said. It's a tragic reminder of the dangers faced by women every day. The public's response galvanized law enforcement, who promised a thorough investigation to bring the perpetrators to justice. For many, however, the case was a stark reminder of the systemic issues that enabled such crimes to occur, including inadequate safety measures, societal inequalities, and the challenges faced by young women living away from their families. With public pressure mounting, the Cebu City Police Department launched a full-scale investigation. Detectives began tracing Rhea Mae's last known movements, interviewing friends, acquaintances, and anyone who had been in contact with her in the days leading up to her disappearance. Surveillance footage from nearby establishments was reviewed, and forensic experts worked tirelessly to analyze the evidence collected from the crime scene. Early leads suggested that Rhea Mae had been in contact with individuals she had recently met through social media. This revelation added another layer of complexity to the case, highlighting the potential dangers of online interactions. As investigators worked to unravel the mystery, the nation waited anxiously for answers. The story of Rhea Mae Tocmo had just begun to unfold, but its impact was already undeniable. A young woman's life had been cut short, leaving behind a grieving family, a community in shock, and a nation demanding justice. The question on everyone's mind was clear: who could have committed such a heinous act and why? The answers, as they would soon learn, would reveal a web of betrayal, manipulation, and unimaginable cruelty. As investigators dug deeper into the circumstances surrounding Rhea Mae Tocmo's death, they were faced with a daunting challenge: piecing together her last known movements in the hopes of identifying her killer. The days leading up to her murder held the key to understanding what had transpired. But the picture that emerged was one of betrayal and deception. Rhea Mae had arrived in Cebu City just a few months before her tragic death. At 19 years old, she was full of optimism and eager to build a better future for herself and her family. She found work at a local business and quickly adapted to her new environment, maintaining regular contact with her family back in Davao del Norte. Her phone calls were filled with updates about her job, new friends, and her excitement about living in a vibrant city. But beneath the surface of her cheerful updates, Rhea Mae faced the same challenges that many young women encounter when living independently for the first time. Juggling work, finances, and the pressures of adjusting to a new city, she relied heavily on the relationships she formed to feel secure. It was these relationships, investigators would later discover, that played a critical role in her tragic demise. One of the first leads in the investigation came from Rhea Mae's social media activity. Detectives discovered that she had recently been in contact with several individuals through messaging apps, including a man who claimed to be her boyfriend. This man, whose identity was initially withheld by authorities, became a person of interest in the case. Interviews with Rhea Mae's friends revealed that she had spoken about this relationship but had expressed concerns about her boyfriend's behavior. Some friends described him as possessive and controlling, warning Rhea Mae to be cautious. Despite their warnings, Rhea Mae appeared to trust him, likely unaware of the danger he posed. Further analysis of her social media accounts revealed that Rhea Mae had been planning to meet her boyfriend on the night she disappeared. Surveillance footage from a local establishment confirmed that she had been seen with him and another individual shortly before she vanished. This discovery provided investigators with a crucial lead, but it also raised more questions. What had happened during that meeting, and why had it turned deadly? As the investigation progressed, the web of individuals connected to Rhea Mae's murder grew wider. Alongside her boyfriend, several other individuals came under scrutiny, including his acquaintances. Witness testimonies and forensic evidence suggested that more than one person had been involved in the crime, complicating the case further. One of the most chilling revelations came from a witness who claimed to have seen Rhea Mae being escorted into a vehicle by two men on the night of her disappearance. This sighting, combined with evidence collected from the crime scene, suggested a level of premeditation that pointed to a coordinated effort. Forensic experts discovered traces of fibers and fingerprints on the carton box where Rhea Mae's body was found, linking it to a specific location outside the city. This discovery indicated that her body had been transported and deliberately discarded in an area where it would likely be found. A detail that spoke to the calculated nature of the crime. The motives behind Rhea Mae's murder remained unclear during the initial stages of the investigation. However, two primary theories began to take shape. The first was that her death was the result of a jealous rage. Her boyfriend's controlling behavior, as described by her friends, suggested the possibility of a violent altercation that escalated out of control. The second theory centered on the involvement of his acquaintances. Investigators explored the possibility that Rhea Mae had become entangled in a larger scheme, perhaps unknowingly. The discovery of suspicious transactions linked to one of the suspects added weight to this theory, hinting at motives beyond a simple crime of passion. These theories, while compelling, lacked definitive proof. The investigators needed more evidence to determine who was responsible for the murder and why it had occurred. As the investigation unfolded, Rhea Mae's family remained steadfast in their calls for justice. Her mother, a pillar of strength despite her grief, worked closely with authorities, providing insights into her daughter's character and habits. She was trusting, her mother said in an emotional interview. Too trusting, maybe. She didn't see the danger in people. Her family's determination to see justice resonated with the public, who rallied around them in solidarity. Community leaders and activists used the case to spotlight the vulnerabilities faced by young women. particularly those who move away from their families to pursue better opportunities. This isn't just about Rhea Mae, one activist said during a vigil. This is about every woman who has ever been made to feel unsafe. The circumstances of Rhea Mae's death sent ripples of fear through Cebu City. Parents became more vigilant, urging their children to avoid meeting new acquaintances alone. Friends questioned how someone so well loved could meet such a cruel fate at the hands of people she trusted. The local government responded by pledging to enhance safety measures, including increased surveillance and community patrols. However, these efforts did little to ease the lingering unease that had taken hold of the city. For many, the murder was a stark reminder of the dangers that lurked beneath the surface of seemingly ordinary lives. By the end of the second week of the investigation, authorities had gathered enough evidence to make their first arrest. The suspect, identified as Rhea Mae's boyfriend, was apprehended and brought in for questioning. His initial denial of involvement crumbled under the weight of the evidence, including inconsistencies in his alibi and physical evidence linking him to the crime. Despite his confession, the case was far from over. Investigators suspected that others were involved in planning and executing the murder, and their focus turned to identifying and apprehending the remaining individuals. As the truth began to surface, it became clear that Rhea Mae's death was not the result of a single act of violence, but a chilling conspiracy that reflected the darkest aspects of human behavior. With the arrest of Rhea Mae's boyfriend, the investigation took a decisive turn. Authorities now had a suspect in custody who could potentially provide crucial information about the events leading up to her murder. However, as investigators delved deeper, it became evident that this case was far more complex than initially thought. What seemed like a singular act of violence quickly unraveled into a web of betrayal, deception, and cold calculation. During initial questioning, the boyfriend, identified as Simeon Gabutero, denied any involvement in Rhea Mae's death. He claimed that he had last seen her the night before her disappearance and had no knowledge of her whereabouts afterward. However, inconsistencies in his account raised immediate red flags. Faced with mounting evidence, including surveillance footage and witness testimonies, placing him with Rhea Mae on the night she disappeared, Simeon eventually broke down. In a chilling confession, he admitted to being present at the time of the murder, but claimed that he was not the one who ended her life. Instead, he implicated two other individuals, acquaintances of his, whom he alleged had been the masterminds behind the crime. According to Simeon, the crime stemmed from a personal dispute, though the exact details of the motive remained unclear. His confession painted a harrowing picture of the night's events, describing how Rhea Mae had been lured into a trap under the pretense of meeting someone she trusted. Once she was vulnerable, the situation escalated into violence, culminating in her tragic death. Simeon's confession led investigators to a new set of suspects. Two men he identified as accomplices. These individuals, both with criminal records, were believed to have assisted in carrying out the murder and disposing of Rhea Mae's body. Their involvement added another layer of complexity to the case, suggesting a premeditated and coordinated effort rather than a crime of passion. Law enforcement quickly launched a manhunt for the two suspects, who had gone into hiding after news of Simeon's arrest broke. Tips from the public, along with surveillance data and phone records, helped authorities track their movements. Within days, both suspects were apprehended and taken into custody for questioning. While the confessions provided valuable insights, investigators knew they needed concrete evidence to build a strong case. Forensic experts played a pivotal role in connecting the dots and corroborating the suspects' statements. The carton box in which Rhea Mae's body was found yielded critical clues. Fingerprints lifted from the duct tape matched those of Simeon and one of the other suspects, placing them directly at the crime scene. Fibers from the box and its contents were traced to a specific location, a warehouse where Simeon had previously worked. This discovery suggested that the box had been deliberately selected and prepared for its grim purpose. Further forensic analysis of Rhea Mae's remains provided chilling details about the manner of her death. The autopsy revealed signs of blunt force trauma, asphyxiation, and ligature marks indicating that she had been subjected to prolonged violence before her death. The timeline of her injuries aligned with the suspect's confessions, strengthening the prosecution's case. As the suspects continued to cooperate under interrogation, investigators pieced together a clear picture of the crime's motive. According to Simeon, the murder was fueled by jealousy and resentment. He claimed that he had felt betrayed by Rhea Mae, though the exact nature of this perceived betrayal remained vague. His accomplices, motivated by promises of financial gain, had allegedly agreed to help him carry out the act. Text messages and call logs retrieved from the suspects' phones revealed detailed discussions about their plans. The evidence showed that they had scouted locations, prepared tools, and coordinated their actions with chilling precision. The level of premeditation shocked even seasoned investigators, who described the crime as cold-blooded and calculated. One of the more disturbing aspects of the case was the role social media played in facilitating the events leading to Rhea Mae's murder. Simeon had used messaging apps to establish trust with Rhea Mae, exploiting her openness and willingness to connect with others. Investigators uncovered a series of manipulative messages in which Simeon alternated between flattery and guilt-tripping, creating an emotional dependency that ultimately made Rhea Mae vulnerable. The suspects had also used social media to monitor Rhea Mae's movements, ensuring that their plan could be executed without interference. This revelation sparked broader conversations about the potential dangers of online interactions, particularly for young women navigating new environments. As details of the crime emerged, public outrage intensified. The calculated nature of the murder, coupled with the betrayal of trust, struck a nerve with people across the Philippines. Vigils and protests were held in Rhea Mae's honor, with participants demanding justice not only for her, but for all victims of gender-based violence. The case also reignited debates about the role of law enforcement and the judicial system in protecting vulnerable individuals. Activists criticized the lack of preventive measures and called for stricter laws to address crimes of this nature. "This isn't just about one case," said a speaker at a rally in Cebu City. "It's about creating a society where no one has to fear for their life because of their gender or their trust in others." For Rhea Mae's family, the revelations were both devastating and galvanizing. While they were relieved that the suspects had been apprehended, the knowledge of how their daughter's trust had been exploited only deepened their grief. She believed in people, her mother said. She saw the good in everyone. And that's what they used against her. The family vowed to honor Rhea Mae's memory by advocating for change. They partnered with local organizations to raise awareness about the dangers of online interactions and the importance of vigilance in relationships. Their efforts aimed to ensure that no other family would have to endure the pain they had experienced. With the suspects in custody and a growing body of evidence, prosecutors began preparing for trial. They faced the challenge of presenting a cohesive narrative that accounted for the crime's complexity while emphasizing the deliberate and heinous nature of the act. The confessions, forensic findings, and digital evidence formed the backbone of their case. As the trial approached, the stakes grew higher. For Rhea Mae's family, friends, and supporters, the proceedings were not just about securing convictions. They were about sending a message that such crimes would not be tolerated. The quest for justice had only just begun, but its impact was already being felt far beyond the courtroom. The trial of the 3 suspects accused of murdering Rhea Mae Tocmo began in a packed courtroom in Cebu City. The nation's attention was firmly fixed on the proceedings, with Rhea Mae's family, friends, and community members anxiously awaiting justice. The trial became not only a legal battle, but also a moral reckoning, a moment to confront the deeper issues of trust, betrayal, and violence that had led to her tragic death. The prosecution, led by a seasoned attorney, presented a meticulously constructed case. They began by outlining the events leading up to Rhea Mae's murder, relying heavily on the confessions of the suspects, forensic evidence, and digital communications retrieved during the investigation. One of the prosecution's key arguments was the premeditated nature of the crime. They highlighted text messages and call logs that showed the suspects coordinating their actions in advance, scouting locations, and preparing tools for the murder. Surveillance footage and witness testimonies placed the suspects with Rhea Mae on the night of her disappearance, further tying them to the crime. The forensic evidence was equally damning. Experts testified about the fingerprints and fibers found on the carton box, the injuries on Rhea Mae's body, and the timeline of her death. These details corroborated the confessions and painted a chilling picture of the suspect's deliberate actions. The prosecution also focused on the betrayal of trust that made the crime possible. They called on Rhea Mae's friends and family to testify about her relationship with Simeon, emphasizing how he had gained her trust only to exploit it in the most horrific way. This was not a random act of violence, the prosecutors said in their opening statement. This was a calculated, deliberate betrayal. The defense, faced with overwhelming evidence, adopted a strategy of deflection and mitigation. They argued that Simeon's confession had been made under duress and that his accomplices had been coerced into participating in the crime. They painted Simeon as a man driven by jealousy and insecurity, suggesting that the murder had been a spontaneous act rather than a premeditated plan. The defense also sought to shift blame among the suspects, with each trying to minimize their role while implicating the others. This tactic created moments of tension in the courtroom. as the suspects contradicted each other's accounts and struggled to maintain consistency under cross-examination. Despite their efforts, the defense faced an uphill battle. The evidence against the suspects was overwhelming, and their attempts to downplay their involvement only served to highlight their lack of remorse. One of the most poignant aspects of the trial was the testimonies from Rhea Mae's family and friends. Her mother, a pillar of strength throughout the proceedings, took the stand to share the profound impact of her daughter's death. "Rhea Mae was my light," she said, her voice trembling. "She was kind, trusting, and full of dreams. They took her from us, and our lives will never be the same." Friends of Rhea Mae described her as a loving and vibrant young woman who had always seen the best in people. Their accounts underscored the senselessness of her death and the devastating betrayal she had experienced. "She trusted them," one friend said. "She believed they were her friends. How could they do this to her?" These emotional testimonies moved many in the courtroom to tears and reinforced the gravity of the crime. For the prosecution, they served as a reminder of the human cost of the suspect's actions. The trial also became a focal point for broader conversations about gender-based violence and the vulnerabilities faced by young women. Outside the courthouse, activists and community members gathered to show their support for Rhea Mae's family and to demand systemic changes to prevent similar tragedies. Protesters held signs with messages like "Justice for Rhea Mae" and "Protect our women." Xenia calling for stricter laws against gender-based violence and improved safety measures for women in cities. Advocacy groups organized educational workshops and forums to address the cultural and societal factors that perpetuated such crimes. The public's involvement added pressure on the judicial system to deliver a fair and decisive verdict. For many, the trial was not just about seeking justice for Rhea Mae. It was about sending a message that such crimes would not be tolerated. After weeks of testimony, cross-examinations, and legal arguments, the jury reached a unanimous verdict. The 3 suspects were found guilty of murder, kidnapping, and conspiracy. The judge, in delivering the sentence, condemned their actions as heinous and inhumane, emphasizing the betrayal of trust that had led to Rhea Mae's death. Simeon Gabutero, identified as the primary instigator, received a life sentence without the possibility of parole. His accomplices, whose roles were deemed equally significant, were also sentenced to life imprisonment. The courtroom erupted in a mix of relief and grief as the verdict was announced. For Rhea Mae's family, the sentencing provided a sense of closure, but could never erase the pain of their loss. The conclusion of the trial marked a turning point for Rhea Mae's family and the broader community. While justice had been served, the case left lingering questions about the societal issues that had allowed such a crime to occur. Activists and advocates vowed to continue their work, using Rhea Mae's story as a catalyst for change. In the weeks following the verdict, community leaders launched initiatives aimed at promoting safety and awareness. Schools and community organizations implemented programs to educate young people about the dangers of manipulation and the importance of vigilance in relationships. Local authorities pledged to enhance surveillance and law enforcement efforts to prevent similar crimes. For Rhea Mae's family, the trial's conclusion was both an end and a beginning. They established the Rhea Mae Foundation to honor her memory and support young women facing similar challenges. The foundation provided scholarships, counseling services, and educational programs to empower women and promote awareness about gender-based violence. At a memorial event organized by the foundation, Rhea Mae's mother addressed the crowd with a mix of sorrow and hope. "We can't bring Rhea Mae back," she said, "but we can make sure her story is never forgotten. We can fight for a world where no one else has to suffer like she did." The trial of Rhea Mae's killers was a landmark case that highlighted the complexities of trust, betrayal, and violence in modern society. It underscored the importance of vigilance, accountability, and systemic change in addressing the vulnerabilities faced by young women. While justice was served, the case left an indelible mark on Cebu City and the nation, serving as a stark reminder of the work that still needed to be done to create a safer, more equitable world. With the conclusion of the trial and the sentencing of Rhea Mae's killers, the city of Cebu and the nation as a whole were left grappling with the broader implications of her tragic death. The case had exposed systemic issues surrounding gender-based violence, the misuse of trust, and the vulnerabilities faced by young women in society. While justice had been served in the courtroom, the fight for meaningful change was just beginning. For Rhea Mae's family, the verdict brought a sense of relief, but no real solace. The pain of losing their beloved daughter and sister in such a cruel and senseless manner was a wound that would never fully heal. Yet, amidst their grief, the family found a sense of purpose: to ensure that Rhea Mae's death would not be in vain. The Rhea Mae Foundation, Zrenia, established in her memory, became the centerpiece of the family's efforts. The foundation aimed to support young women pursuing education and employment opportunities, particularly those who, like Rhea Mae, left their hometowns to seek better lives in cities. Scholarships were provided to help young women access education, while counseling services offered emotional support and guidance for those navigating new and often challenging environments. The foundation also launched programs to raise awareness about the dangers of manipulation, online exploitation, and gender-based violence. Workshops were held in schools and communities across the Philippines, teaching young people about recognizing red flags in relationships and the importance of establishing safe boundaries. At one such workshop, Rhea Mae's mother spoke with heartfelt conviction. "My daughter was kind, trusting, and full of dreams," she said. "If her story can save even one life, then we know her light continues to shine." The impact of Rhea Mae's murder extended far beyond her family. In Cebu City, the crime left an indelible scar on the community, challenging its sense of safety and trust. Vigils and memorials held in her honor became spaces for collective grief, as residents grappled with the horror of what had happened in their midst. At one vigil, candles illuminated tear-streaked faces as community leaders and activists called for action. "We cannot let this happen again," said one speaker. "We owe it to Rhea Mae and to every woman who has been silenced by violence to create a safer world." These gatherings also served as a platform for activism, with organizers advocating for systemic reforms to address the root causes of gender-based violence. Efforts included petitions for stricter laws, enhanced community policing, and increased funding for support services For victims of abuse, Rhea Mae's murder sparked a nationwide conversation about the challenges faced by young women in the Philippines. Advocacy groups used her story to highlight the prevalence of gender-based violence, as well as the social and economic factors that made women like her particularly vulnerable. One issue that came under scrutiny was the role of social media in facilitating crimes like Rhea Mae's murder. While platforms offered opportunities for connection and self-expression, they also posed significant risks, particularly for those who were unaware of the dangers of online interactions. Advocacy campaigns emphasized the importance of digital literacy, teaching users how to protect themselves and recognize warning signs of predatory behavior. The case also reignited debates about the need for stricter laws to combat gender-based violence. Activists called for the passage of the Anti-Gender-Based Violence Act, Zrenia, which would provide stronger protections for women and harsher penalties for perpetrators of such crimes. The bill, which had languished in Congress for years, gained renewed momentum in the wake of Rhea Mae's death, as public pressure mounted on lawmakers to take action. One of the most significant outcomes of the case was the recognition of education as a powerful tool for prevention. Schools and community organizations began incorporating lessons on consent, healthy relationships, and digital safety into their curricula. These programs aim to equip young people with the knowledge and skills needed to navigate complex social dynamics and protect themselves from harm. The Rhea Mae Foundation played a key role in these efforts, partnering with educators and advocates to deliver impactful workshops and seminars. At one event, a teacher reflected on the importance of these initiatives. If we can teach our students to value themselves and others, we can prevent tragedies like this from happening again. Rhea Mae's story resonated far beyond the Philippines, drawing international attention to the issue of gender-based violence. Human rights organizations, including Amnesty International and the United Nations, issued statements condemning the crime and calling for systemic reforms. The case was cited in global reports on violence against women, emphasizing the need for coordinated efforts to address this pervasive issue. For many, Rhea Mae's death became a symbol of the intersectional challenges faced by young women in modern society. Her story highlighted the vulnerabilities created by economic inequality, the misuse of technology, and deeply ingrained societal biases. It also underscored the resilience of communities and the potential for collective action to drive meaningful change. The legacy of Rhea Mae's story extended to the arts, where her life and tragic death inspired a wave of creative expressions. Filmmakers, playwrights, and musicians used their platforms to honor her memory and raise awareness about the issues her case had brought to light. One of the most impactful works was a documentary titled Rhea's Light, Zrenia, which chronicled her life, the investigation into her murder, and the advocacy efforts that followed. The film premiered at an international human rights festival, drawing praise for its sensitive portrayal of Rhea Mae's story and its call to action. Visual artists also contributed to the movement, creating murals and illustrations that celebrated Rhea Mae's life while condemning the violence that took it away. These works became powerful symbols of hope and resilience. reminding communities of the importance of standing together against injustice. As the community and nation mourned Rhea Mae's loss, her story became a rallying cry for change. Activists and advocates emphasized that her death should not be remembered solely as a tragedy, but as a catalyst for a safer and more equitable society. The best way to honor Rhea Mae is to ensure that no one else has to go through what she did, said an advocate during a memorial event. This means fighting for stronger laws, better education, and a society that values and protects its women. While Rhea Mae's family and community continued to grieve, they also found solace in the progress inspired by her story. The initiatives launched in her name, the conversations her case sparked, and the reforms it fueled were all testaments to the enduring impact of her life. As her mother reflected during a foundation event, Rhea Mae's light was taken from us, but her spirit lives on. Through every life we touch, every mind we change, and every step we take toward justice, she is with us. Rhea Mae's story serves as a powerful reminder of the resilience of the human spirit and the capacity for communities to unite in the face of tragedy. Her legacy is a call to action for all who hear it, to confront injustice, support the vulnerable, and work tirelessly toward a world where everyone can live with dignity, safety, and hope. The story of Rhea Mae Tocmo, though tragic, became a powerful symbol of hope, resilience, and the fight for a better future. As her family, community, and advocates continued their work to honor her memory, they transformed their grief into action, ensuring that her death would inspire lasting change. Rhea Mae's legacy is a reminder of the collective power of humanity to confront injustice and build a safer, more compassionate society. One of the most enduring aspects of Rhea Mae's legacy is the empowerment of young women across the Philippines. Through the programs and initiatives launched in her name, countless women gained access to education, resources, and support systems that help them navigate the challenges of modern life. The Rhea Mae Foundation became a cornerstone of this effort, offering scholarships and mentorship programs that emphasized self-reliance, confidence, and safety. These initiatives provided not only financial assistance, but also emotional and psychological guidance, equipping young women with the tools they needed to pursue their dreams without fear. The foundation also partnered with local governments and community organizations to create safe spaces for women. These spaces, often located in schools and community centers, offered workshops on topics ranging from financial literacy to personal safety. For many young women, these programs were transformative, giving them the knowledge and confidence to thrive in an often hostile world. Rhea Mae's story underscored the importance of education in preventing gender-based violence and fostering empathy and understanding. Schools across the country adopted new curricula that addressed consent, healthy relationships, and the dangers of manipulation and exploitation. These lessons, taught from a young age, aim to instill values of respect and equality in the next generation. One of the most impactful initiatives was the introduction of digital literacy programs that taught students how to navigate social media and online interactions safely. Given the role of social media in Rhea Mae's case, these programs emphasize the importance of recognizing red flags, protecting personal information, and seeking help when faced with potential threats. At a school event commemorating Rhea Mae's life, A teacher spoke about the importance of these changes. Her story reminds us that education isn't just about academics, she said. It's about teaching our students to value themselves and others, and to create a society where everyone can feel safe. Rhea Mae's murder reignited the push for stronger laws to protect women and marginalized groups. Advocacy groups leveraged the public outrage surrounding her case to demand the passage of the Anti-Gender-Based Violence Act, logically sought to impose harsher penalties on perpetrators of such crimes and provide greater protections for victims. The campaign gained significant momentum, with petitions, rallies, and lobbying efforts drawing attention to the urgent need for reform. Lawmakers, who had previously been reluctant to support the bill, found themselves under intense public pressure to act. This isn't just a legal issue, one advocate said during a rally in Manila. It's a moral issue. How many more lives have to be lost before we say, enough? While the legislative process was slow, the advocacy efforts brought tangible changes. Several local governments implemented their own ordinances to address gender-based violence, providing a framework for national reform. These measures, while not yet comprehensive, marked a step forward in creating a safer environment for women across the country. Rhea Mae's story resonated far beyond the Philippines, becoming a touchstone for international discussions about gender-based violence and online safety. Human rights organizations around the world incorporated her case into their campaigns, using it to highlight the universal nature of these issues and the need for collective action. In Southeast Asia, where similar challenges persisted, Rhea Mae's story served as a rallying cry for regional solidarity. Advocacy groups in neighboring countries drew inspiration from the efforts in the Philippines, collaborating on initiatives to address the cultural and systemic factors that enabled such crimes. Global leaders in the LGBTQ+ and women's rights movements also recognized the significance of Rhea Mae's story, using it to advocate for greater protections for vulnerable communities. Her life and death remind us that the fight for equality and safety is far from over, said a speaker at an international conference on gender equity. But her legacy also shows us what's possible when people come together to demand change. The arts played a crucial role in preserving Rhea Mae's memory and amplifying the lessons of her story. Filmmakers, writers, and musicians created works that celebrated her life while addressing the societal issues highlighted by her case. These projects not only honored Rhea Mae, but also sparked meaningful conversations about gender, safety, and the power of community. One of the most impactful works was a feature-length documentary titled Her Voice Lives On. The film chronicled Rhea Mae's life, the investigation into her murder, and the activism that followed. Audiences praised its sensitive portrayal of her story and its call to action, with many viewers citing it as a catalyst for their own involvement in advocacy work. Visual artists also contributed to the movement, creating murals, paintings, and digital artworks that depicted Rhea Mae as a symbol of hope and resilience. These pieces, displayed in public spaces and shared widely on social media, ensured that her story remained in the public consciousness. In Cebu City, where the tragedy unfolded, the community continued to honor Rhea Mae's memory through acts of kindness, solidarity, and vigilance. Neighborhood watch programs were established to enhance safety, while local leaders worked to rebuild trust and foster a sense of unity. At an annual memorial event organized by the Rhea Mae Foundation, swing residents gathered to celebrate her life and reflect on the progress made since her death. Candles were lit, songs were sung, and stories were shared, creating a powerful reminder of the impact one life could have. One community leader summed it up poignantly. Rhea Mae's story began here, but its lessons have traveled far and wide. She has brought us together, and together we will continue the work she has inspired. As Rhea Mae's family, community, and advocates look to the future, they emphasized that her legacy was a call to action for everyone who heard her story. Her life and death were a reminder of the importance of standing up against injustice, supporting the vulnerable, and building a society where trust and safety could thrive. The best way to honor Rhea Mae is to carry her light forward, her mother said at a foundation event. Let her story inspire us to be kinder, braver, and more determined to create a world where no one has to live in fear. Rhea Mae Tocmo's life, though tragically cut short, continues to touch the hearts and minds of people around the world. Her story is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the power of collective action to effect change. Through the efforts of her family, community, and countless advocates, her legacy shines brightly, a beacon of hope, compassion, and the unwavering belief in a better tomorrow.